Tiege.
And I'm Sam.
And we are your well-informed girlfriends.
Bringing you today's news, gossip, and unsolicited hot takes. This week, we're talking about World War III, the next Ozempic, and whatever happened to those Trump tariffs.
Now that is a good question. We'll also be chatting about dating camp.
Okay.
The Gen Z glare.
All right.
And laundromats that are being designed like nightclubs. So some good news in all of the darkness.
Yes, okay, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
All that and so much more on this week's episode of Well-Informed Girlfriends.
Yes, and while we have you, if you could like and subscribe, that would be amazing.
We'll love you forever. All right.
Yeah, let's get into it. Okay.
Let's get into it.
Our first story is obviously something we have to talk about. This
Yes.
week has been crazy. We're recording here on Sunday, so obviously there's a lot evolving. But is World War III officially happening? How can we possibly go to work at a time like this? Is everyone's therapist working overtime? So Sam, what is the latest?
Okay, so everybody's probably been following this already, but basically the United States used airstrikes to hit 3 military targets in Iran. They hit nuclear facilities. Early on Sunday, in an operation, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said that they obliterated Iran's nuclear ambitions, though they're still assessing the full impact.
Yes.
Basically, Donald Trump warned last night, Saturday night, that the U.S. will launch more attacks if Iran doesn't make peace. VP J.D. Vance was on Meet the Press this morning, and he answered questions that are on everyone's mind.
Is the United States now at war with Iran?
No, Kristen, we're not at war with Iran. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program. But what we've said to the Iranians is we do not want war with Iran. We actually want peace. But we want peace in the context of them not having a nuclear weapons program. And that's exactly what the president accomplished last night.
You know, the president says the nuclear enrichment sites were, quote, completely and totally obliterated. There is some question about that, though, this morning. Do you have 100% confidence that Iran's nuclear sites were totally destroyed?
Well, Kristen, I'm not going to get into sensitive intelligence about what we've seen on the ground there in Iran, but we've seen a lot, and I feel very confident that we have substantially delayed their development of a nuclear weapon, and that was the goal of this attack. That's why it was a success. And, of course, what happens next, again, Kristen, is up to the Iranians.
Okay, so wait, we're not at war with Iran, but we're at war with Iran's nuclear program. How does that make any sense?
That's what they're claiming. Basically, Trump and Trump's people believe that airstrikes don't constitute going to war. Airstrikes are just an attack. They're basically saying we're using this as a cudgel to get Iran to come to the table.
Okay, but my other question too is that he said that they might not be, it sounds like they're not totally destroyed, right? In that soundbite, it sounds like maybe there's still some sort of something left.
Yeah, so the concept of the reason America kind of got involved, well, I mean, there are a million geopolitical reasons, but one of them is that we allegedly have missiles called the Bunker Buster. And some of these military sites that Iran had were deep underground. And so the idea was that America could use the Bunker Buster to destroy some of these deep underground bunkers. Obviously, it's hard to tell, I think, how deep they are and what was destroyed in an airstrike. And the U.S. is already out of Iran's airspace. I know they said that almost immediately after the attacks, they skedaddled out of there. So I'm not sure they know how much has been destroyed.
Well, Trump, in his official statement, said that they were totally destroyed. But I think that J.D. Vance kind of backed that up a little bit. It sounds like in that interview, it sounds like he was like, maybe they're not fully destroyed.
Right. Yeah. And it's and that's what the Pentagon said this morning as well. They're not entirely clear. So basically if it's damaged, though, that would probably set them back regardless. So if it's totally gone, then the program will be totally gone. And I guess it sounds like it isn't. So
yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because now it's like we all have to be on high alert here in the United States. Now US cities, Washington, D.C., New York, Los Angeles, where we are being told by the National Terrorism Advisory Board to be on high alert for potential attacks from either sleeper cells in the US or cyber attacks. Right. So awesome.
I mean, silver lining, it doesn't sound like they have long-range missiles able to hit American targets on U.S. soil. Right. So, at least we're not, supposed to be listening for air raids.
Yeah.
That said, that sucks. I can't sugarcoat that for sure.
Yeah.
And Iran has accused us of crossing a very big red line, I think is what he said.
Okay.
And he doesn't know how much room is left for diplomacy. Other Iranian leaders are downplaying the impact to the nuclear program. By the way, we should mention Iran has long claimed that their nuclear program is actually for the purpose of civilian and peaceful uses. I don't know that anyone believes that.
Yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard testified earlier this year that they weren't close to having a nuclear warhead, but that they did have a nuclear program. So it's like, and now Israel's claiming Israeli intelligence shows them that they were close to having nuclear warheads. So,
right.
Who to believe? And that's, we're not in Tehran, couldn't tell you.
Not to get on a side tangent, but I've seen so many videos online of like the fleet coming in.
Yeah, so the U.S. Navy is moving its fleet. Some of it was already planned. Like some of it's been planned for months, but other big warships are being moved all to support this mission.
Like a huge submarine that looks like it has like missiles on it.
Yeah. So they are moving
toward
the
Iran.
Sixth Fleet. Yeah, basically to the waters surrounding the area. So they could be in like around Africa or the Mediterranean. All those places are like basically a base for them to launch.
Okay.
If they were to need to. I think Donald Trump has said that he doesn't want that to happen. He thinks that having like boots on the ground would be an escalation that he's not willing to get us into. And for the record, like every president, I think since Carter has not wanted us to get like involved in a physical military conflict on the ground.
No.
In Iran, like
but
for
what about
years. So
boots in the sea? Feels very similar.
Boots in the sea and the sky does feel very similar. But like that actually kind of is a great segue into my next segment called Can Trump Do That? Like, can he do that?
Okay.
So that was like the first question that we were asking when we heard about these attacks on Iran. Like, can Donald Trump go to war, without congressional approval? Famously, by the way, if you're joining us, the Constitution says clearly that Congress is the entity that declares war, right? That pretty much is like indisputable. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't explicitly say how and when Congress can declare war. And so in 1973, they passed this thing called the War Powers Act. Okay. And basically said that the president can only, this was all during Vietnam. Basically, the War Powers Act said that the president can only go to war without congressional approval in three situations. One, a declaration of war against us or that Congress has declared. Okay. Two, a specific statutory authorization, which is how we've gotten involved in a bunch of military conflicts following 9/11. Mm-hmm. And three, a national emergency created by attack upon the U.S., its territories, or armed forces and possessions. So basically, an effort to end Iran's nuclear program doesn't really fall into any of those buckets. So that's a huge question mark. The DOJ and Trump are going to try and justify it using something like that. But
so what happens if it wasn't constitutional? We're just like, it's over.
Well, they already bombed them. So I don't know what you're going to do.
Oh my gosh.
That said, presidents have carried out airstrikes over the years without congressional approval and without sending in ground forces.
Okay.
So the question really becomes, what constitutes war? Is an airstrike war? Is it literal boots on the ground? And I think that that's probably why we're seeing, I mean, there are many geopolitical reasons to not send troops into the Middle East, of course, like other than pre-existing deployments and protecting American entities there already. But like, if you were to deploy troops to get engaged in a military conflict, I think that's pretty like indefensibly starting a war. Right. So we'll see. I don't know what'll happen. It doesn't sound like there are a lot of hawks in Congress who do want America to go to war in Iran. But, frankly, there are a lot of more isolationists, even conservatives. So it remains to be seen what will happen. I don't know that he would have congressional support. I doubt he has the votes for that to go to an actual war. And I don't think you could use, there's like one specific law, statutory authorization that Congress did pass, saying anyone that helped 9/11 happen is an enemy of the U.S. And therefore, that's how we've gotten involved in Syria and Afghanistan and Iraq and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think Iran really had much to do with that. So I doubt that they'll be able to use that as a justification. So that's where we're at. Jeez. Are we at war? Question mark?
Oh my gosh. It also is like, how can you tell me that like bombing someone isn't
an act of war?
An act of war.
I know, right?
What? hard to believe.
That feels like something that you would learn in like geopolitics 101, like your first day of college. Like, hey, if you bomb someone, that's an act of war. But you know what? What do we know?
Who knows?
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting too that they were saying that the actual site that they were targeting was like the size of a laundry machine. And like these big, so I'm sure it was probably pretty hard to strike that like small area. Who knows? I don't know.
That's crazy. I have no idea.
Anyways, okay, so we're going to do another segment.
Yay. Segments.
Another segment we're calling, hey, whatever happened with that? So there are a few topics we want to discuss, but the first one that we really love talking about here on the pod is tariffs. Hey, whatever happened with that? Sam?
Okay, so basically we made a big deal about how tariffs were going to raise prices. And
big deal.
Yet seemingly none of that has happened.
Yeah.
And we were like, ¿por qué?
Whatever happened with that?
Exactly. So consumer prices are actually only up 2.4% last month annually, according to the Bureau of Labor statistics.
Okay.
And that was a lot less than economists had predicted, and a far cry from the doom and gloom experts and maybe us predicted.
I was scared.
I was scared. And I'm still a little scared because they actually still might come true.
Yeah.
Bummer. America's economy, super big. No surprise there.
Yeah.
Super complex. And like predicting when prices will go up and down is very tricky business.
Yeah.
Especially because like Trump's tariffs have largely been on again and off again. By the way, there are still Trump tariffs, although they have been on again and off again, and they have varied in rates and depending where they are, that sort of thing. They came up with a deal with China. Blah, blah, blah. Anyways, it's also important to note that stores are actually still working through a bunch of the inventory that they brought over ahead of the tariffs. So they're still charging us the pre-existing prices because they filled up their warehouses with stuff from China prior to the tariffs taking effect. So many mainstream economists are saying that the low inflation of the spring has been the calm before the summer storm, basically.
Okay, so we could be seeing tariffs actually start to affect us soon.
Yeah, for sure. And like, especially if we go to war, we could see gasoline prices change.
That'll happen.
Yeah,
really
and we could see a lot of like consumer goods from China. You know what I mean? It's all going to have a domino effect.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in econ. Famously, barely got out of Mizzou alive with my business minor. But like the point of this is that like it's hard to predict. The timing of it could all be up in the air, but I think a lot of economists are saying that it'll be closer to the rest of the summer, when we start seeing those prices change.
Wow, very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, this next story I'm excited to hear about.
Yes. Okay. So doctors are actually getting really close to the next phase of weight loss drugs.
Okay.
They're working on a daily pill, specifically Eli Lilly is. It's called orforglipron. I think I'm saying that right. I looked it up before this podcast.
Great.
And it appears to be about as effective as the weekly Ozempic or Wegovy injections for weight loss and lowering blood sugar. And there are actually more than like a dozen experimental medication researchers are working on that are just a daily pill instead of these weekly injections. But like a lot of them are in early trials, but some of them could be on the market as soon as like next year.
Wow.
I know. Isn't that crazy? And
That's interesting.
And some of them are more effective than Wegovy or Ozempic or Zepbound currently. Right now, people lose between 15 to 20% of their body weight on the existing drugs. The people who like are qualified for it. I don't know about I don't think they've studied the compounded GLP-1s and like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But it would also be obviously so much easier to take a pill than a weekly injection. And you probably, they say, wouldn't lose as much muscle, which is like a huge thing for people on GLP-1s. So, also disclaimer, I did take Wegovy for a while. I'm not currently on it, but I just feel like I should say that in this story.
Yeah.
But also important to note, more pills, like a pill would actually be like a cheaper manufacturing cost. A lot of the cost of the on-brand GLP-1s comes from those needles. The needle just like dispenser things, they're single use.
Yeah.
And so it'd actually be way cheaper to make a pill in general.
That's interesting. I mean, look, I think that Ozempic is really cool for people that need it and all that stuff. I just feel like all these weight loss drugs, like our obsession with these weight loss, like, can we talk about like maybe making food a little bit healthier? Like maybe putting less preservatives in our food, maybe putting less things that are like seed oils that are making our food so unhealthy, and all these like things that are like inflaming our body. Like that feels like an issue. Like I feel like all of our food is so highly processed and everything that we eat is essentially garbage. So like, why don't we like address that? Like, cause it's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on like the issue of like, I don't know, all of our food being super unhealthy and like our options being limited when it comes to like what we can buy and like what we can eat in our grocery stores. I feel like that's also an issue. So I do think like, while this is great, and I think you had a decent experience when you used Wegovy, right? Like
I did.
And it can like jumpstart a journey, right? Of like being healthier.
It could. If you were not me, maybe yes. I just have barely been hanging on. But like, yeah, no, I think for a lot of people, it's a game changer. And I think for many people, it was really hard. It's really hard when the world is, it's set up to increase your consumption of these kind of like garbage foods and that sort of thing. That's not me not taking accountability. Please don't come for me in the comments.
No, and it's also not me like saying it's anyone's fault for like wanting to be on a drug.
I totally hear what you're saying. And I think that like, it is a little bit of a Band-Aid on a much larger situation.
And it's like, why are we like obsessing about like everybody getting on like these weight loss pills when it's like, well, we could just like give people healthier food to eat. But I
think that's a much harder problem to solve, I think, frankly. And also like you have to look at capitalism.
True.
These drug companies are for-profit drug companies. They have nothing to do with like the food of America, really.
Right.
And so they're out here trying to make a profit by ostensibly helping others. Of course, I'm sure my friends in marketing at Eli Lilly will not love me saying that, but like that's the truth. They're going to make money off of this, and their stock goes up every time they announce something like this. So
and I think there's also like that's also without mentioning like the socioeconomic like impact of like. Healthier food is more expensive. Yeah. So like if you're, it's like these, I don't know, it's tough to like be healthy in America and like
famously tough.
It's tough. Like economically it's tough, right?
Economically it's so tough
to try and eat healthy. So yeah. Crazy. Well, that's an interesting story nonetheless.
For sure. Let's talk about dating camp.
Okay, I'm so excited about this story. So China's decade-long one-child policy has left a staggering legacy. An estimated 30 million more men than women in the country.
Oh, yes. So, we kind of talked about this last week, but not the dating camp part.
So there's a gap that's now fueling a social and emotional crisis for many single men in China.
Right.
So the BBC did a story this week about how many millions of single men in China are now wondering if there's anything else they could do to find a mate. Enter dating camp.
Can we send American men to dating camp? This sounds great.
Obviously, that is what I was going to pitch here.
Sorry. I didn't mean to steal your punchline.
Yeah, that's fine. Not the first time. Enter dating camp. Yes, some of them are considering going to dating camp. So what is dating camp, you might ask?
Yeah.
So dating camp is a 7-day intensive boot camp in China led by a dating coach and his wife, who also coaches women on dating. They guide these single men through a week of confidence building, social training, all aimed at helping them find romantic partners.
Okay.
So the key elements of dating camp include 1, image makeovers. So they get new clothes, new hairstyles, they get posed photos for dating apps. Obsessed with this. They also have social coaching. So that means that they practice approaches and scripted lines to approach women and talk to women. And then the final thing.
Okay.
So the final element of dating camp is these dating tactics. Okay. So basically just like how to approach women, the push and pull of conversation, and like how to keep something going and how to like move forward in a relationship.
Oh my gosh, they're teaching them emotional availability?
It's adorable.
I love that so much.
It's adorable. Yeah, so here's my thing, like I think we could probably have this in America too, right?
Oh my God, should we be running a dating camp? I feel like I have many thoughts.
But the problem is I don't know if American men would be so open to going to a dating camp. I feel like dating...
They're like, actually, the problem is women. Ugh.
Yeah, like I think like if I approached any of my guy friends was like, you want to go to dating camp? They'd be like, get lost. Like they'd be like, what are you talking about? You need dating camp.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Oh my gosh, you know what's so crazy? This is a tangent, but I feel like I saw this video from a woman who was talking about having standards while dating. Yeah. And basically she was just saying like, if you're not emotionally available, if you don't have a good job that at least matches mine, I don't want to date you. And all the men in the comments were like, F you, lady. Yeah. Like, you suck. And I was like, I'm sorry, that feels like the bare minimum. What? But the men online did not think so. And I was like, this clearly obviously got shared on some like Red Pill 4chan page or something. But still, I was just like, Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So anyways, ladies, keep your standards. And also, any men interested in a dating camp run by me, a successfully married person, I'm available. Is my husband going to pass dating camp? I don't know. Probably not.
No, your husband probably famously wouldn't pass dating camp. But no, I do think
I'm sorry if you heard that, Suan.
I do think this is great. I do think that I would attend a dating camp. I think it sounds fun.
Yeah, boot camp.
Girls would, because girls like self-improvement.
Oh my gosh, we love self-improvement.
Yeah.
So you're right. Girls would definitely attend dating camp. But like the problem is, I don't know that it's us that need to change.
That's
I
the
feel like
thing.
the bar is on the floor for men.
Bars on the floor. But I love it. I really think like dating camp is so adorable.
I
I think, you know what I think
You know
it
what?
is?
I love that for them though.
You know what I think it is? I think it is like, I love a guy who's like willing to like better themselves and like wants to participate and like wants to, you know, participate in the dating game. Like I think it's cool to show initiative. So like I love to see that story.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
love a man who believes in self-improvement. That's
Yeah.
great.
So our next story is about something called the Gen Z gaze or the Gen Z glare.
Okay.
So the New York Post did a story about this week. Basically, the Gen Z gaze is something that people are experiencing with young service workers. So young service workers, maybe it's your barista or someone working at a local store, literally like takes a look at you and they look right through you. So
Wait.
I don't know if you've experienced this. So like young service workers, these Gen Z
Yeah.
workers, when you go into a store, there's no greeting, no smile, no eye contact, just a cool blank stare
Wait,
from your Gen Z
Should we do it
barista.
at our respective cameras? We're just like,
So basically that is the Gen Z glare. And yes, it has rubbed a lot of the older folks and customers the wrong way, okay? So they see it as a decline in manners, but others say it's less about rudeness and more about setting a boundary or a refusal to perform emotional labor for strangers. So what do you think about this? Have you experienced the Gen Z glare? Have you noticed it? Does it bother you? Or do you just respect their boundaries?
I absolutely want to go on record and say I do not respect your boundaries and don't have a service job if you're going to have a shitty attitude. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Come for me in the comments. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I am a current service worker. I literally am going to my barista gig in 10 minutes after we finish filming this podcast.
yeah.
And I would never in 1,000 years approach something that is like, especially in a tip-based economy,
Yeah.
and be like a complete jerk to
Yeah.
people. And I will say, this has bothered me for years. My husband and I call it the disgruntled teens.
Yeah.
I understand you might not be a teen, and I don't care. You're a disgruntled teen, and the disgruntled teens at Chipotle or wherever are just slapping your shit down and getting you on out of there with the crappiest attitude. And I actually think it's so rude. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Like, I just think it's so rude. And I say
Yeah.
this as someone who has worked in service on and off for my entire life since I was 14.
yeah.
And I think that if you go and work in service, you should have a good attitude.
No, absolutely. Look, that is the service industry. It's
Yeah.
called the service industry for a reason.
Yeah.
You are literally serving people. And of course, if you don't like this job and it's a stepping stone job, you can still learn a lot by being good to people on the job.
For sure.
Like,
It
you don't
costs
need-
nothing to be kind.
Yeah.
That is my thing.
I
And
do agree.
I just think that if you are someone who wants to make minimum wage doing something else where you aren't needing to, if you
Then
are
do,
an introvert,
like,
that's fine.
a
Do
phone
literally
job.
anything else. Like
Yeah.
literally, you could literally stock shelves for the same pay as being on the floor at Home Depot. That's what my dad
Yeah.
does because he doesn't like people. And like, I
Yeah.
just think that that's a good plan.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know why you would ever take a service job if you don't like
Totally.
humans.
Yeah, no, I do understand it and I have seen it a lot too. And
Yeah.
it honestly makes me feel really uncomfortable. And I'm like, oh God, should I not be here ordering food? And I think like if the
Mhm.
owner would see that those are the types of interactions that like the person at the front desk is offering to people, I think the owner would be like, oh God, we don't want that person in the front like representing our store because it makes people uncomfortable. Like I feel very uncomfortable if I'm greeted by someone who is kind of bummed that I'm there. I'm like, wait, I'm like so excited to be here and like have a coffee and like hang out.
Yeah.
But like if I don't feel welcome, then obviously I don't want to be here and I'm not going to
Facts.
come back. So yeah,
Mhm.
I do think that it's something that's happening.
Oh, for sure. And I
Yeah.
also just want to say, I'm not discounting that maybe you've had a bad day or whatever.
No,
like,
for
I
sure.
totally get that. It's when that's your consistent attitude in a service role.
Yeah.
Like, your job is to make people happy to be there.
yeah.
And also, like, I'm sorry, I'm coming through this Chipotle line and I'm keep giving Chipotle as an example because I feel like this is an egregious, that's like where it happens to me a lot.
yeah.
And I'm just like, what are these horrible vibes that you have? Like, your aura is so clouded. Like, ugh, I just
Yeah.
don't understand.
yeah.
And I personally am like, I understand setting a boundary and not wanting to do emotional labor on behalf of others.
Yeah.
But that's not what having a good attitude is.
Yeah.
Doing emotional labor for someone is like if you came to me and you were going through a breakup and I was having a bad time, but I was comforting you.
Yeah.
It's not you being like, hello, can I please get a chicken burrito bowl? Like that is not emotional labor, and you shouldn't be working in service if that you think it is.
Yeah. Okay. No, totally. Okay, so our next story is something we talked about at the top here about cool laundromats. Break it down.
Okay, I actually love this idea.
Okay.
But basically, especially in Brooklyn, where like the hipsters live and breathe,
Of course.
they are opening laundromats that double as like bars or coffee shops or hangout spots.
Obsessed.
I know. Think about all the times you went to a laundromat and it was like a grimy, grody experience.
Yeah.
The New York Times is reporting there's a rise in these fun laundromats, and basically they have all of this other stuff for you to do. They might have games. They might have a barista slinging coffee.
I love it.
Or they talked about one place they called a laundro bar
Ooh.
with like booze, which
Fun.
I love. And
Absolutely. Oh my God, my laundry with an Aperol spritz.
I know. Can you imagine how much better your life would be? Like that's crazy.
Incredible.
They talked about another one that operates as a laundromat during the day and a speakeasy at night, which I think is fun.
Fun.
I guess like you probably aren't drinking and doing laundry at the same time at that one, but like that's a good dual use of space. Like, and
That's
it also
so great.
creates like a community hangout,
That's
which
so
I
great.
think is good. I
No, I'm
love that
obsessed.
idea.
No, I love
Would you, I mean, like, I don't have in-unit laundry, so I would totally go to one of these. Would you? You do have one in-unit, but.
I do have in unit, but yeah, no, I would, if I were to, like, it's such a New York thing to do that.
Yes, yeah.
And like, that feels like a perfect place to test something out like that. So yeah, I would absolutely go.
Can you imagine if you just like met a boy at the laundromat and then you could be like,
Cute.
we met over like doing our darks and like now here we are sharing an Aperol spritz. What a cute meet cute.
We talk a lot about third spaces being down and decimated in our world.
Mhm.
These like places that you would go as like communal hangouts. And I think this is one way to revive a communal hangout. So I love it.
I love it.
Okay, so our next and final story of the day is very interesting.
Love this concept.
So engineers have developed a headset that records dreams while you sleep and plays them back afterward. So it's using a combination of AI and fMRI brain scans. So this device interprets your brain activity during your sleep to reconstruct the visual content of your dreams and can play it back the next day, which is kind of crazy. First of all, it's not perfect yet, but this is basically like engineers are working on the first models of this, and it's kind of interesting. What do you think about this? Would you want your dreams replayed the next day?
I mean, like, obviously, I have crazy dreams. I don't know about you. I have this theory that has something to do with the ADHD, but basically, I'll like dream an entire Harry Potter prequel film.
Okay.
It's like nuts. I read this story too, and it said that like when you wake up, you also describe your dream to the device, which helps it generate the stuff.
Okay.
Which I think would be helpful. Also, it's cool because it keeps it for like a week. So you can remember what you dreamt about and like use it as a dream journal. So
Yeah.
I'm into it. I would totally do this.
This is interesting. I feel like I only remember my nightmares. Like, I don't remember any good dreams. I wake up and I'm like, that was horrifying. I'm sweating. So I don't actually love this personally. And I just feel like some things like are my brain's problem. You know, like some things
That's
are my
none of your business.
No, it's like not my business. Like my brain can deal with that and it's off time. Like I don't need to be bringing it back to my subconscious and my conscious mind. Like you deal with that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I mean, gosh, I can't believe we're even thinking that feels so impossible. Like think about like that happening feels like impossible, and now it's like happening. So wow.
I know.
Crazy.
Do you have any reoccurring nightmares you want to share with the class?
No, a lot of running.
A lot of
running. I do a lot of running, which I think is a theme that I should probably talk about in therapy.
I don't know. You know what? My teeth always fall out in dreams.
That means something.
Oh yeah, it's anxiety. I Googled it. The internet says it's anxiety.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Hate
Great.
that for me.
We love it. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. I know it's a really heavy week with the news and everything, and we hope that maybe we were a little bit of a bright spot in your week of news consumption.
For real. Yeah.
We're going to keep it going and just give you guys the latest on everything, but we're here to support you. Hit us up in the comments, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.